have you reported him, shouldn't you? I just don't know what he did.
Consider what specific purposes continued daily posting serve.
Crossing boundary lines, boyfriend, Zoom calls, cryptic emails, Zoom confessions, and even their first meetup. Welcome back to another thrilling installment, part 2 of the Kendra Files. Is she a life coach or is she a life ruiner? Today, we will be reviewing parts 6 through 12 of Kendra's story. So, for those of you friends who it's either your first time on the channel or you have no clue who this Kendra individual is, allow me to give you a quick recap of part 1 of the Kendra Files.
You are the Oracle.
At first, Kendra just thought this was an innocent crush, but as the sessions went on, she realized that potentially this guy may be more than what he seems. Of course, that's according to Kendra. The only thing of importance that you need for context for this is Bruce Gates, where she had an impaired eardrum and she had broken ribs and stuff like that. And she told a psychiatrist this, and the psychiatrist just let her keep on going. So, let's continue on in this journey, friends. Now first, let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, I did dye my hair. Wow, I also just got back from the Hyphen concert. Alright, part 6 takes place shortly after what I like to call
bruising on my abs.
So, according to Kendra, this is where the intimacy really went from 0 to 100. The psychiatrist was very careful with his wording of how he would compliment Kendra. For example, he would comment on appearance, but not her appearance. One instance that affected Kendra greatly, to the extent that she has these in all of her videos, is the turtle shell glasses incident. So, here's the scoop.
That he had feelings for me too.
They were having a conversation about turtle shell glasses, and he had mentioned that he likes turtle shell glasses. So in Kendra's world, she was like, oh, let me start putting on turtle shell glasses for every single video as well as for their next sessions. Here's the thing. He was talking about himself. He has turtle shell glasses. We are introduced to a new character, Kendra's bestie, who is an EMT, Brianna. And Kendra would tell this bestie everything, gave her the whole scoop. According to Kendra, Brianna had told her that it's a matter of time before this psychiatrist decides that he can no longer be her doctor. And the crazy thing is, you would think that would scare most people. For Kendra, she began to get excited about the possibility that he would bring these words to her. And according to Kendra, the reason why she felt this way was because he was so good at manipulating her with his weaponized neutrality that she was just head over heels for him, willing to convert to his religion even. Admittedly, sometimes it's very hard for me to keep track of what I'm saying, just because sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, this story just goes into what the fuck land, and the timeline for these videos is messy because, one, we're experiencing it through the lens of an unreliable narrator, which I had previously stated in part 1, Kendra. So Kendra ends up asking the psychiatrist, after she confesses her love for him, if she was diagnosed with anything other than ADHD. Apparently, during the initial consult, when, Kendra was talking about her daddy issues and stuff like that and her traumas, the psychiatrist, which I had said we were going to call the doctor, diagnosed her with other trauma and stressor-related disorder. And in Kendra's world, he withheld this information to manipulate her. And that is the end of part 6 of Kendra's saga. Let's move on to the next Kendra file.
January 2023, at this point I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist.
Part 7. So the crazy thing about this installment is the timeline here starts to get a little messy. This actually takes place before Bruce Gates. A lot of what we are going to be covering timeline-wise, I'm just going to use Bruce Gate as a reference point because that is 2024. Anyways, a year before Bruce Gate, as I had said, she had gotten a boyfriend. And at first, this psychiatrist wasn't really keen on her having a boyfriend. He then later realized that this boyfriend was a lot like him. Around this time, she began talking to the psychiatrist about her sex life, which is a big cross of boundaries. But in Kendra's world, the psychiatrist should have been the one to sort of redirect her, which, to be fair, that is a good point. But in Kendra's world, the reason why he never stopped her was because of the fact that he loved it. Of course, personally, I believe that sometimes, the psychiatrist could have just been uncomfortable, but so a year and a half into this relationship with her boyfriend, Kendra started sending the emails to the doctor about how much she liked him and how grateful she was for him. And the therapist and the psychiatrist both insisted that Kendra stay with his boyfriend, even though she told them both that this boyfriend did not meet her needs, because of the fact that they most likely just didn't want to deal with her. But according to Kendra, they got just sort of a sick fulfillment out of her being deprived because they felt like they were needed by her. Christmas of 2023, she began dating this therapist. And I think for this part, I do think it was a little bit sus because the therapist does confess to Kendra on their dates. He has a crush on one of his clients. So according to Kendra, the therapist stated to her on the dates that he beats, that he grinds the pepper, so to say. Actually, there's a perfect word for this. According to Kendra, he goons to one of his clients that has red panties. With this information, Kendra decides to tell both her therapist and the psychiatrist. And when Kendra had told the psychiatrist, he looks like he was thinking of vomit. According to Kendra, this was because he was doing the exact same thing to her and she put a mirror up to him. However, I believe that the therapist was just uncomfortable. And now we're going to cover the next installment of the Kendra Files, Part 8. And this is where everything changes.
So at this point in the story, there are two main players. My psychiatrist, who's my age, who crossed major ethical boundaries, and my therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD.
Kendra went to her psychiatrist with intimate details, and after she confessed to the psychiatrist that she had feelings for him, this is where, in Kendra's mind, things got a lot deeper. So around this time, Kendra discovered the fact that the doctor offers sessions both in person and through telehealth. One thing that I had to mention previously is that all of their sessions up until this point, for the past 3 years, have been on Zoom. So Kendra was very betrayed by this information. And during one of their sessions, she asked why. Personally, I think it's just because he was scared of her. Around this time, she stopped getting responses from her psychiatrist from her emails, but he would still mention them during their psychiatry sessions. And according to Kendra, the reason why he did this was because he maintained plausible deniability. Throughout the month, because of the psychiatrist games, she would write down when she thought about him, and during their sessions, she would tell the psychiatrist. Every week, Kendra would go to the 75-year-old therapist with a PhD and talk about how much she loved the psychiatrist. And the thing that Kendra did not like that the therapist would do with a PhD is that this therapist did not care at all. I would just let her talk. So in October of 2024, they were vibing on Zoom, Kendra and the psychiatrist. And she had noticed that she did not have a next appointment. So this is where we get introduced to a new character, the office manager. This office manager had leaked to Kendra that the doctor had appointments both in person and through telehealth. With this information, Kendra felt very betrayed and she decided to confront the doctor in their next session. So after she found out that the doctor was lying to her, she ended up confiding in her therapist. This is where the therapist decided to kind of feed her delusions a little bit, and she said, he knows there would be a lot of sexual tension if y'all were to meet in person. So this leads us to right when they have their first in-person interaction, almost 4 years later. So let's explore it right now.
And I ran up and I gave him the biggest hug. And you know what he did? He barely patted me on the back. It was
in the session, a lot went down. So even though he had betrayed her trust by not letting her do an in-person appointment earlier, Kendra was starstruck when she saw him across the foyer for the first time. She decided to give him the biggest hug in the world, and in response to this, the doctor was obviously uncomfortable and stunned, and decided to only give her an awkward pat on the back. During their psychiatry session, Kendra told the doctor a lot of stuff. The thing of importance for this specific session is previously Kendra and the therapist, they started to cross the boundaries a little bit. The therapist began to text Kendra in between their weekly sessions. And here she would ask for advice about some of her other clients because the therapist knew that Kendra was an ADHD coach. And of course, Kendra decided to spill the tea with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said that this was a clear boundary violation. I think honestly the psychiatrist meant this to both their relationship as well as the therapist with the PhD texting Kendra in between sessions. However, this did not cross Kendra probably. According to Kendra, the therapist was sloppy. However, the doctor was a lot smarter with the way that he manipulated her. He would never message her in between appointments, so he would have plausible deniability. So one thing that is important to note is Kendra actually did do a pretty good thing here, because before meeting in person, Kendra did at least ask for consent. Around the time began to meet in person, that's when she actually had her spiral. And around this time, after their first in-person interaction, we get introduced to the character we've all come to know and love, Henry, the ChatGPT bot.
To break it down in a snappy way you could use on the live or in a story.
One thing that's actually kind of funny is the fact that Kendra did tell a psychiatrist about Henry, the ChatGPT bot, and he was actually pretty impressed by this. I feel like this is because Kendra probably was not, as a result, oversharing as much to this doctor, but anyways. She poured her heart out to Henry, and Henry in response was like, yikes. So then Kendra decided to take some action. And this is where we start to see Kendra test the waters.
What song reminds you of him? All Too Well 10-minute version.
In December of 2024, almost a year after Bruisegate, Kendra decided to have an appointment with the doctor on Zoom. One thing that I think was an interesting move was the fact that Kendra probably could have done it in person, but she decided to do it on Zoom. So, being the woman that she is, Kendra took action. The session, according to Kendra, went very well, and she said, "You and I have a very special patient-doctor relationship." And in response to this, the doctor gave her the nastiest look ever, like she had just offended his whole family. And the doctor responded, "You and I have a very professional patient-doctor relationship." Kendra decided to respect this boundary, at least for now. Kendra then tells us the real reason why she decided to share her story on TikTok. And that brings us right into part 13 of the Kendra Files.
I was looking for support. I was looking for help.
So let's explore that. The real reason why Kendra re-downloaded TikTok was because she was looking for an outlet for support and help, because she had noticed that there was not many instances about violations of patient-doctor relationship. Up until that point, Kendra had noticed that one of her dates actually did violate and cross the boundaries. And that might have motivated her to go on the internet and share her story. She ended up deciding to leave the psychiatrist in March of 2025. With the information we have currently up until this point, that kind of makes the timeline a little bit blurry of what happened in between December 2024 and March 2025. She never explicitly states it was March 2025, but I am assuming that was so because she came back to TikTok at August of 2025, and she had mentioned that she re-downloaded the app 1 week prior to making her series. Even though Kendra had set a boundary with her psychiatrist, she still couldn't stop thinking of him. So when in doubt, contact Henry. So she began to ask her ChatGPT bot, Henry, why she could not stop thinking about him. And Henry had actually mentioned something pretty useful. Henry had mentioned this term called transference, where you project your feelings onto someone else. And in their next session, which I am assuming took place in around January of 2025, Kendra actually mentioned this to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist had asked her, did he tell you about countertransference? Kendra did not really think much about it, but when she got back home, she realized, why would he have mentioned that unless he was feeling that? That was a lot to take in for one afternoon. We are just getting started, and there's still a lot more to cover. There's still so much more to go through. So join us for next time as we finish the series once and for all. Okay, as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe so I can make more money. I'm just kidding. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Hugs and kisses.